Welcome to the 7th lecture of the course on Sociological Perspectives on Modernity. Okay. Till now, we have discussed thematic preliminaries, and the second section, half of it we have covered. We have discussed Marx's views on modernity, but whichever theorist we are looking at, whichever theoretical trajectory we are looking at, we will always be looking at through the four central philosophical and political foundations of critical modernist paradigm in sociology. Okay? This is very important. We have already discussed Marx's views on modernity against the backdrop of these four pillars of modernity. Now, in another 3-4 lectures, maybe 4 lectures, including today's 7th lecture, we will be reflecting on Max Weber's interpretations of modernity through the lenses of those 4 critical paradigms of modernity, 4 central ideas of modernity, 4 central themes of modernity, okay? Namely holism or totality, reflexivity, rationality and social movements. But before starting with Weber's interpretations of modernity, okay, let us first see Weber's theoretical and methodological positions to tackle modernist paradigm in sociology. Okay. Both Marx as well as Weber, their intellectual orientations, however, remain the same, but the way they look at modern society and the way they project modern society, the way they envision modern society are quite different. Okay, both are drawn from German philosophical tradition. Both were writing, both were the byproducts of, both were writing in the 19th century. Weber a little more than 19th century. He wrote till 1920 when he passed away. 20th century, but almost contemporaries. Maybe a gap of 15-20 years, okay, or 25 years, 30 years, okay, not much. And both were influenced by Industrial Revolution in Europe, especially Great Britain. Both were influenced by German philosophical tradition, and both were influenced by French Revolution of 1789. In this context, it is interesting to see how Weber tried to reflect on critical modernist paradigm in sociology through his different works. Suppose methodological individualism, suppose classes, religion, Protestant ethic and the spirit of capitalism, economy and society, methodology of the social sciences. Because whatever methodologies that we formulated for social sciences, they were modeled on the basis of natural sciences. Okay? For a long time, sociologists as well as social anthropologists, they started with the positivistic tradition. In this context, how Weber deviated from positivism Marx deviated from positivism in a different sense, but how Weber deviated from positivism is interesting to examine. In fact, Weber contributed heavily to the development of substantive sociological theory and to the debates on methodology. Weber's methodological writings are usually characterized as effecting a reconciliation between positivism and neo-Kantianism. What are these two schools of thought? As I have already discussed, that positivism is a school of thought which emerged in the 19th century and early part of the 20th century. It's a very dominant school of thought. Okay. It emerged as a response to both theological stage as well as metaphysical stage. It questioned the dominance of church, all religious institutions. It is a school of thought which places sciences on a higher pedestal vis-a-vis non-sciences. It is such a school of thought. It is a byproduct of Enlightenment, Industrial Revolution, French Revolution, where positivists, the proponents of positivism saw the supremacy of sciences over non-sciences. There are several tenets of positivism. There are different characteristics of positivism. To name a few, that science is distinct from all areas of human activity or creativity because it possesses a method unique to it, that is methodological. Science follows certain methods which are very much different from the methods which non-sciences follow. Okay? That's how science should be given a unique place in its history, in the history of science. Okay. Secondly, that there is only one method common to all sciences irrespective of their subject matter, that is methodological monism. Then what kind of method that will be absolutely common to all sciences irrespective of their subject matter, whether it is astronomy or physics or chemistry or biology or mathematics? What kind of method? Then the positivists argued that the method of science is the method of induction. What is that method of induction? Then they went back to Baconian philosophy of science. Bacon was the founder of inductivism. Okay? Inductivism is rooted in empiricism, and empiricism is based on experience. We must start with observation, then we arrive at a theory. Without observation, without experience, we do not tend to arrive at a theory. That's what inductivists argue. Okay? Now, this is inductivism also is known as Baconian philosophy of science or empiricist philosophy of science. Okay. And positivists suggested that no, the method of science is the method of induction. Fourthly, the proponents of positivism argue that the hallmark of science lies in the fact that all scientific statements must be systematically verifiable, that is systematic verifiability. Whatever I tend to claim, I tend to prove, I tend to observe, I must be able to systematically verify it. I just cannot say that no, this is true, but I cannot verify it. No, if it is true, then it must be verifiable for positivists. Okay. Fifthly, there must be a unilinear relationship between observation and theory. observation leads to the generation of theory, but theory does not lead to the generation of observation. The relationship between observation and theory is unilateral. Theories are for, according to positivists, theories are observation dependent, whereas observations are theory independent. Another tenet suggests that there must be a dichotomy, there must be a binary between fact and value. Facts are value neutral, whereas values do not have any factual content. Okay? That is why I gave you this example a couple of lectures back, that if this is a, suppose this is a laptop, this is a table, okay, I will say that this is a draft, okay. These are facts. I just cannot tell you, suppose I will say that this pair of glasses of mine, this is a fact, okay. But I cannot tell you, but if I say no, this pair of glasses looks nice, and you say no, this pair of glasses looks very ugly, then both of us, we add value to it. That is why for positivists, facts are value neutral, whereas values do not have any factual content. Okay? How do we produce knowledge in the positivistic schema? Now, only by accumulating more and more observations. Okay? This is, I mean supremacy of sciences over non-sciences. There cannot be any interpretation, that there is only one way of looking at a particular phenomenon. Whereas new Kantians, drawn from the works of Kant, Immanuel Kant, who wrote Critique of Pure Reason. What is pure reason? Okay. It does not imply that they were superstitious, no. You see, positivism tried to sketch these characteristics, keeping the dominance of religious institutions in mind. So that that would enable that in fact enabled them to put forward this argument that no, science is distinct from all areas of human activity or creativity because it possesses a method unique to it. Okay, this is the thing. But if you look at Kant and subsequently neo-Kantians, okay, for them the knowledge of the social world is not very objective, as positivists argue. For positivists, knowledge is very objective, it is not subjective. But for Kant and neo-Kantians especially, particularly neo-Kantians, the knowledge of the social world is subjective in nature, is a constructed one. It involves interpretation. I mean, the knowledge of the social world, our knowledge of the social world is a constructed one, which involves selection and interpretation of multiple data systems. That is what neo-Kantianism is all about. Suppose I will keep on accumulating my observations, but my observations also involve certain amount of selection. I do not tend to observe everything. I may observe something, you may observe something, others may observe something, but I do not tend to observe. If I will be given or you will be given an option to observe this room, somebody may say that no, this camera looks beautiful, somebody may say that no, these books look beautiful, somebody may say that no, this arrangement doesn't look nice, somebody may say that no, the lecture is not nice, somebody may say that no, the lecture is good. See, our observations also involve certain amount of selection. We do not tend to observe everything. Okay? This is very important. Please keep in mind that we don't tend to observe everything. We always tend to observe in a selective manner. And that selection also is based on certain perspective. Okay? On what basis, what is a perspective then? A perspective refers to a set of symbols which human beings use to select from all potentially observable aspects of nature. When I say nature, it includes both natural and social phenomena. Okay? A perspective is above all a viewpoint which helps us in selecting, organizing our perceptions and guiding our actions. In this sense, for neo-Kantians, our knowledge of the social world is a constructed one, is a partial one, is a subjective one. It is not objective, it is not absolute. If this is so, then it must involve certain criteria of selection and certain criteria of interpretation of multiple data systems. If positivism suggests supremacy of sciences over non-sciences, because science is the most objective thing produced by human species, generated by human species, for neo-Kantians, no, our knowledge of the social world, including sciences, because what is science? Science is a social creation. I mean, all knowledge, including scientific knowledge, is socially caused. Okay? As Bloor said it in Knowledge and Social Imagining, that our knowledge of the social world is a constructed one, is subjective, is not absolute, is partial, and which involves selection and interpretation of multiple data systems. And Weber's theoretical positions, Weber's methodological writings are usually characterized as effecting a reconciliation between these two extreme schools of thought. Weber did not try to bank only on positivism or only on neo-Kantianism while making an argument. Rather, he banked on, he deployed both these schools of thought, both these theoretical constructs, both the methodological devices to make his arguments. Okay? Then Weber's, as I said, Weber obviously contributed heavily to the development of substantive sociological theory and to the debates on methodology. I mean, Weber's methodological writings, Weber's theoretical reflections are usually characterized as effecting a reconciliation between positivism and neo-Kantian. Though Weber's positions were not, of course, entirely consistent throughout his life, because he always used to oscillate between positivism and neo-Kantianism. Okay? It is possible to say that, in general, Weber rejected the view attributable to some neo-Kantians that the cultural sciences are exclusively concerned with the uniqueness of their objects of study, and that the category of causality is inapplicable in them. For Weber, causality is also applicable to cultural sciences. See, what is culture that way? If somebody, I do not want any formal definition, I want you to understand the meaning of it. Okay? If you have watched Three Idiots movie, I do not want you to be Chatur Ramalingam, who always that tradition of thinking that no, we were to learn by rote. Okay? This is not the way to. I do not want any formal definition. Okay? I want you to understand the meaning involved in the concept of culture. So, what is culture? See, culture is not like a tree. Once a tree is uprooted, that dies. Culture is not like that. Culture is just like a stream that flows from one generation to the other. Okay? In this sense, New Kantians suggested that the way causality, the aspect of causality is applicable in sciences may not be applicable while studying culture. Whereas Weber pointed out that cultural sciences are exclusively concerned with the uniqueness of their objects of study, and that the category of causality is inapplicable in them. Weber was committed on the other hand. Okay, Weber rejected first of all the view attributable to some Neo-Kantians that the cultural sciences are exclusively concerned with the uniqueness of their objects of study. Okay. And on the other hand, on the contrary, Weber was committed to Neo-Kantian insistence on the methodological peculiarities of the cultural sciences. Okay. For Weber, what are those methodological peculiarities? No, these peculiarities centered around two related concepts. One is value relevance and the other interpretative understanding. Okay. We'll discuss value relevance. What is value relevance? What is your value? It is not simply in economic sense. Okay. What is value relevance? What is interpretative understanding of social action and so on? Okay. For Weber, the cultural sciences differ from the natural sciences in the distinctive role of valuations in the formation of concepts and in the distinctive type of knowledge involved in them. A third area of methodological differences was thought by Weber to be the use of idealizations in the cultural sciences. Then first two areas we have seen, one is positivism, the other Neo-Kantianism, and the third area you will find we are discussing a third area of methodological differences between natural sciences and cultural sciences was thought by Weber to be the use of idealizations in the cultural sciences. Okay. The way Weber tried to reflect on sociology, okay, it is, I mean, Weber talked about sociology as a reflection of interpretative sociology. I mean, for according to Weber, sociology in the sense in which this highly ambiguous word is used here is a science which attempts the interpretive understanding of social action in order thereby to arrive at a causal explanation of its course and effects. Then there are three things important here. Okay? What are these three things? Then sociology is a science, not in I mean both the way positivism tried to sketch science as well as neo Kantians the way they tried to interpret science. Okay? It is that kind of a science which attempts the interpretive understanding of social action, and our interpretations will differ. My interpretation may differ from you, your interpretation may differ from another person. But whichever interpretive understanding of social action that we are going to demonstrate, it must involve a causal explanation. What is an explanation which has a cause and effect relationship? Okay. Then, according to Weber, sociology is a science. He was very much aware of the ambiguities involved in the term science itself. Having been aware of such ambiguities of the term science, for Weber, science as well as sociology themselves, according to him, sociology is a science which attempts the interpretive understanding of social action in order thereby to arrive at a causal explanation of its course and effects. Okay? An exposition of Weber's methodological position can usefully proceed with an analysis of each of the concepts and contrasts involved in the definition. Okay? These three things: science, okay, interpretive understanding of social action, and causal explanation. Okay? Then to start with, first, what is that? We know now what is science in the positivistic schema. Now let us see what is social action for Weber. That concept of social action for Weber, I mean the characterization of sociology in the schema of in the methodological schema of the understanding and explanation of social action, okay, which involves two important contrasts. Okay. First, what are those two important contrasts? First, Weber distinguished the paradigmatic objects of sociological knowledge for him, I mean from the supra-individual social entities. Okay. What are these paradigmatic objects of sociological knowledge for Weber? Okay. I mean paradigmatic objects of sociological knowledge for Weber refer to individual social actions, their meanings and causes. And what are these supra-individual social entities? Maybe states, institutions, classes, collective consciousness, and so on. Then for Weber, if paradigmatic objects of sociological knowledge are indicative of individual action, individual social action, okay, then or concerning only individual, then supra-individual social entities refer to the collective social action. Okay, that there is a contrast. Then such existence is supposed in much sociological theorizing and also everyday thinking about social relations. Okay. Then this concept of social action, okay, the way we are talking about interpretative understanding of social action, okay, that refers to the characterization of sociology as a disciplinary formation, as a theoretical construct, as well as a methodological device in the schema of the understanding and explanation of social action, okay, which involves these two contrasts. Okay. Now, I mean these two contrasts, I mean one is paradigmatic objects of sociological knowledge for Weber on the one hand and supra individual social entities on the other. When we discuss, when we say understanding and explanation, explanation is often attributed to the school of positivism. Understanding, on the other hand, is often attributed to the school of neo-Kantianism. That is why in research methods, what we generally find that explanation, when we talk about in quantitative research methods, we very often we attribute explanation to quantitative research methods, whereas we attribute understanding to qualitative research methods. Okay? But there are controversies regarding this. I truly admit these controversies, and I truly admire those controversies because I always believe in the dialectical relationship between both quantitative as well as qualitative. I always believe in the dialectical relationship between explanation and understanding. Okay. That's why when this kind of theoretical and methodological schema of the understanding and explanation of social action, which involves two important contrasts, okay, between paradigmatic objects of sociological knowledge for Weber on the one hand and supra individual social entities on the other hand. Okay. If paradigmatic objects of sociological knowledge for Weber are concerned with individual social action, individual consciousness, okay. And why do they, I mean if I say that individual social actions, why do individuals undertake such action? What are the meanings generated? What are the motives behind such action? What are the causes of such action? Okay? And when Weber referred to the supra-individual social entities, namely states, institutions, classes, collective consciousnesses and so on, this is very important. Again, then he always, Weber always tried to situate the concept of social action as affecting or as effecting a reconciliation between the two. Between the two, I mean between the paradigmatic objects of sociological knowledge for him on the one hand and the supra-individual social entities on the other. And such existence, such delineation is supposed in much sociological theorizing and also everyday thinking about social relations. Okay? Weber indeed does not actually deny the existence of such entities. Okay? These whether they are paradigmatic objects of sociological knowledge or supra-individual social entities. Okay? Weber actually doesn't deny the existence of such entities, but argues that for interpretative sociology, they must be treated as solely the resultants and modes of organization of the particular acts of individual persons. Okay? Whereas Marx was always referring to collective social action, was always referring to collective consciousness, intellectual consciousness, political consciousness, class struggle. Okay. Weber deviated from that position and he always argues that if you for interpretative sociology, okay, such entities, okay, entities, I mean those paradigmatic objects of knowledge, sociological knowledge on the one hand and supra-individual social entities on the other, okay, must be treated as solely the resultants of modes of organization of the particular acts of individual persons. When any change was attributed to the existing mode of production by Marx, okay, but for Weber, such paradigmatic objects of sociological knowledge as well as supra-individual social entities, okay, must be treated as solely the resultants and modes of organization of the particular acts of individual person. Then, whereas Marx emphasized more on, stressed more on the collective, Weber emphasized on, stressed more on the individual. Okay. Perhaps for this reason, Weber's position here would now be regarded as methodological individualist. Okay. Involving the claim that insofar as collectivities may be said to have characteristics independent of the individuals which make them up, those characteristics are to be explained in terms of individual actors and their actions. That is why what is methodological individualism? We will come to this point a little while later. But then, as Weber tried to emphasize more on the aspect of individual social action, their meanings, the meanings which are generated through those individual social action, the meanings which are attached to those individual social actions, the causes of those individual social actions, the motives of those individual social actions, okay, they are important for Weber. Okay. In the modernist construal of agency, okay, if society or new social order or collective became the hallmark in the Marxist schema, okay, then individual social actions, their meanings, their causes, their motives, they assume greater significance in the schema of Weber, so far as the modernist construal of new social order is concerned. Okay, that's why Weber's methodological individualist position involves the claim that insofar as collectivities may be said to have characteristics independent of the individuals which make them up, those characteristics must be explained in terms of only individual actors and their actions. The meanings which are attached to those actions, the reasons of those actions, the motives behind those actions, the causes of those actions. Okay? Then we'll come to this point that what is this? What do we do? Do we talk about methodological individualist position? What is that methodological individualism? Okay. What did Weber refer to when he talked about methodological individualism? Okay, this is very important. Okay. Methodological individualism refers to theoretical positions holding that adequate sociological accounts necessarily involve reference to persons, I mean individuals, their interpretations of their circumstances and the reasons and motives for the actions that they take. and such action by no means necessarily follows from the sharing of a class situation. Okay. Uh, for Marx, whatever collective social action that we undertake, okay, it follows from the sharing of a common class situation. But for Weber, no, it may not emanate from a common class situation. It may emanate from status. Then the proponents of Marxism would argue that no, what is status? Status is gained through class. But for Weber, no, status may be gained through education, maybe politics, maybe party building. It is not simply through class for Marx. If for Marx, it is not simply through classes for Weber. If for Marx, classes are manifestations of economic differentiation, for Weber, classes are based on two parameters, at least two parameters. One is life chances and the other causal component. We will discuss this in the next lecture, that what are life chances, what are causal components. I mean not next, but next to next lecture. I mean when we will be dealing with holism or totality, reflexivity, rationality and social movements, modernity. I mean all these parameters we'll get into. We'll definitely discuss this the what are life chances, causal components and so on. For Marx, the way so not for Marx, but for Weber, what methodological individualism indicates? It indicates certain theoretical positions. Okay. What are those theoretical positions? What are those conceptual categories? Those theoretical positions, those conceptual categories, okay, they were promoted. I mean, they were exhibited through the notions of rights, fundamental right, equality, choice, preference. Okay, my freedom. Okay, in the collective conscience, what is the significance? What is the role of an individual? Okay, that the idea of exercise my fundamental right, the idea of exercising my right to make selection, my right to have equality, my right to have freedom. Okay, these constitute crucial elements of methodological individualist position in Weber's schema. That's why when Weber said no, methodological individualism refers to certain theoretical positions which hold that adequate sociological accounts necessarily involve reference to individuals, their interpretations of their circumstances and the reasons and motives for the actions that they take. Okay? Then there are three characteristics of this methodological individualist position which Weber undertook. What are those? What are those three parameters? Now, first parameter, that methodological individualism, when we examine, we must look at individuals first. Individuals as social actors, individual actors. Then not only individual actors but also individual actions. And the way, secondly, the way individuals attempt to interpret their circumstances, their conditions, their contexts, their backgrounds. My circumstance may be different from your circumstance. Your circumstance may be different from my circumstance. If our circumstances differ, then our actions will also differ. Our individual actions will definitely differ if our circumstances differ. If our circumstances differ, then then the kind of actions that we are going to undertake, if they will also differ, they are bound to differ if our circumstances differ. Then our circumstances also involve the reasons, also involve the motives for the actions that we undertake. This is the third one. I mean, first one is individuals, individual actors as well as individual actions. Secondly, individual actors interpretations of their circumstances, their conditions, their contexts, their backgrounds and so on. And thirdly, the reasons and motives for the actions that individuals undertake. Okay? In the next lecture, we are going to discuss interpretative understanding. Okay? Then what we have discussed today? We started with Max Weber's theoretical approaches and methodological writings, and as we have already discussed, Weber's theoretical positions and methodological writings are usually characterized as effecting a reconciliation between positivism as well as neo-Kantianism, and Weber at times he was critical of neo-Kantians, that Weber rejected the view attributable to some neo-Kantians that the cultural sciences are exclusively concerned with the uniqueness of their objects of study and that the category of causality is inapplicable in them. Weber, however, was committed to neo-Kantian insistence on the methodological peculiarities of the cultural sciences, and for Weber, what are those methodological peculiarities? I mean, those methodological peculiarities centered around two related concepts, namely value relevance and interpretative understanding. And for Weber, the cultural sciences differ from the natural sciences in the distinctive role of valuations in the formation of concepts and in the distinctive type of knowledge involved in them. As a consequence of which, a third area of methodological differences was thought by Weber to be the use of idealizations in the cultural sciences. From here, Weber defines sociology as a science which attempts the interpretive understanding of social action in order thereby to arrive at a causal explanation of its course and effects. And such exposition of Weber's methodological position can usefully proceed with an analysis of each of the concepts and contrasts involved in the definition. Then if there are three things which Weber tried to unfurl in his definition of sociology, that one is science, secondly interpretive understanding of social action, and then causal explanation. Okay, let us begin with concept of social action. We discussed social action in this lecture, that is the characterization of sociology in the schema of the understanding and explanation of social action, which involves two important contrasts. I mean, contrasts between paradigmatic objects of sociological knowledge for Weber, namely individual social actions, their meanings and causes on the one hand, and the supra-individual social entities, namely states, institutions, classes, collective consciousness or whatever on the other, whose existence is supposed in much sociological theorizing and also everyday thinking about social relations. Okay. Weber does not actually deny the existence of such entities. The entities of both paradigmatic objects of sociological knowledge as well as the supra-individual social entities, but argues that for interpretative sociology they must be treated, I mean such supra-individual social entities must be treated as solely the resultants and modes of organization of the particular acts of individual persons. Hence, Weber's position here would now be regarded as methodological individualist, involving the claim that in so far as collectivities may be said to have characteristics independent of the individuals which make them up, those characteristics are to be explained, must be explained in terms of individual actors and their actions. Okay? And then we are trying to end this lecture with Weber's reflections on methodological individualism, which refers to the theoretical positions which hold that adequate sociological accounts necessarily involve reference to at least three things: one, individuals; two, individuals' interpretations of their circumstances; and three, the reasons and motives for the actions that these particular individuals take. And in contradistinction with Marx, Weber suggests that such action by no means necessarily follows from the sharing of a common class situation. This is very important. I mean, Marx always said that whatever collective social action that takes place, it always follows from the sharing of a common class situation. For him, for Marx, change is very important, and whatever change occurs, it is only through classes. Okay? Okay? Ultimately, it is a history of class. Okay? We don't talk about history of one particular individual. But for Weber, the kind of reference that we are making to individuals, individual social actions, individual actors, their interpretations of their circumstances and the reasons and motives for the actions that these individuals take, such action by no means necessarily follows from the sharing of a common class situation. Okay? Having said this, in the next lecture, we are going to discuss interpretative understanding of social action. I mean, Verstehen, I mean understanding, I mean in German, Verstehen means understanding, and what are the methodological peculiarities that we find in interpretative understanding, whether there is direct understanding or indirect understanding. Direct understanding is alternatively known as observational understanding, whereas indirect understanding is alternatively known as explanatory understanding, and so on. And what is culture for Weber? I mean, then we will discuss tomorrow what kind of methodological implications on modernity that Weber's writings have. I mean, on economic phenomena, economically relevant phenomena, and economically conditioned phenomena, and what kind of relationship that economy and religion can forge, and they cannot be separated in our day-to-day life, according to Weber. Okay, we'll discuss from interpretative understanding in detail in the next lecture. Thank you.